Welcome to Lolly Lovin' Life. So glad you're here with me. Living in Connecticut was a whole new way of living for me. The seasons that came, the brutal winters. I very quickly learned that you did have to wear a coat and gloves and boots and a hat, something I wasn't used to, especially coming from Florida. They didn't even own a coat. It seems like I'm struggling a bit to talk about this area of my life. Connecticut was a big change for me, around people I really didn't know, a different state, far, far away from any of my family, and it was just a lot of loneliness. So as we got established there, we lived with his mom and dad, and then we took the barn that they had there, a really neat 2-story barn, and we built a home up there. We built a living room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and a bathroom. We did all the work ourselves. And remember, I was pregnant and lugging and holding, sheetrock and doing all those things. And we had this step ladder thing that we came down from the upstairs because we had not built steps yet. And I was coming down that thing and I fell. Scared me to death because, here I am pregnant. So I was okay, did okay, got through that. And then once we got the place built, we did not have water. We had no water run up to the place. So I was having to go down to wash clothes, to wash any kind of dishes and baby bottles once the baby was born, and lug all that back and forth. Eventually, we got the water, we got the wood stove in there. That's how we heated the home, which was great heat because it was not that big. And the other thing was the lugging the wood. You always had to have wood ready. So we had a big thing on the porch, and then we had a thing inside where we kept our wood. And for work, we did the flea markets. We worked every weekend at a flea market. And then we helped his father, who was an auctioneer with estate sales. We helped him do the estate sales and the auctions. And so that was how we had money or had furniture to sell, buy and trade, that kind of thing. And up there, that's so popular. I was so took back of how you would find a piece of furniture on the side of the road. People just set it out there and you would bring it home and refinish it and then make money on it. So that was pretty cool. And then we both got jobs at a warehouse where you made the shower heads. He would go to work, and then when he got off, I would go into work. I worked the second shift, and then we did that for quite a while. Life there was crazy. I was living in a marriage that was not a marriage. Lots and lots of mental abuse went on, and it was tough because you start losing yourself when you allow someone to start taking it from you. I allowed it. So, a lot of times you don't see that when you're in it, for sure. And once you're out, you realize that you allowed these things to take place. You didn't put your foot down. You didn't seek help. You just allowed it. And having my son was my life, my little boy. I spent all my time with him because he was all I had. And I knew that he loved me and I loved him. And we did so much together. And then as he got older, I thought, I'd really like to go to work. I need to get out of the house. And so I decided to go to a school for CNA at a nursing home. They provided the 6-week course and then hired you. And you had to stay there working. I think it was like 2 years. They wanted you to sign a contract to work with them, which was pretty good. It was a really nice nursing home. I was glad to get the job. I loved working there. And his mom would watch my son. Well, I started working and was doing great, but as in any job, you wound up taking on more than you were supposed to. And when lifting patients, you were not supposed to at that time. I don't know how it is now, but you were not supposed to be lifting them on your own. You were supposed to do it with another partner. And I could never get anybody. They were always, busy or whatever. So I just went to try to lift someone by myself to get them in their chair, and I pulled something. Well, it didn't feel so good. So I had to go to the doctor and get it checked. Well, to our surprise, I found out I was pregnant. And I was like, oh my gosh. So now I can't work because I'm not going to do this job newly pregnant, and now this slight injury, which was not horrible, but it was a pulled muscle. And so I didn't go back. And they let me out of the contract, thank goodness. And then I was pregnant. So, life began being pregnant again and raising my little boy. And so I was home again. And he was still working full time. But it was very hard. I mean, it was just a very hard time in my life. And I know, talking hours and hours with his mom, she had lived the same kind of life and was still living the same kind of life. It was hard on her. She was told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and she never stood up to it. She said, I'm too old now to fight it, and I'm here. And that broke my heart. I'm like, do I want to be that way? Do I want to say that to my kids one day, that this is how you live? This is what you do. You just bow down to them and it's okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. That is not how God intended a marriage to be. And so I thought, by the grace of God, moving back to Georgia would change everything. And I asked and I told him, and we decided, that would probably be a good thing for us to move back to Georgia. He could get a job with the sheriff's department because they were hiring, and then it would be a good, stable job. And so we moved back. We lived with my mom and dad for a very short time, very hard time. There was a lot of arguing, a lot of carrying on because of his temperament. But for the love of my family, they did all they could to make things happen and be okay. And we found a home, a real nice house. I was very excited to have our own home. We got very involved with a church local and rocking along. And again, everybody thought we were so happy. You're just so happy. We love y'all, and everybody came to our house for the gatherings. And it just was, the best thing ever. When deep down inside, I was struggling so bad. I was hurting. I was screaming, wanting out of it. I knew I didn't belong here. I knew I didn't belong in that marriage because it was not a marriage. And when things started happening in our home, which is very hard to talk about, when he started abusing my son, I needed to walk away. I needed to get him out of that. And I didn't. Girls and women, if I can scream to you, if you're in an abusive situation, get out. Seek help. There is ways of it. Don't be so scared thinking you've got to stay in it. I was scared. I didn't want anybody knowing that I was a part of a marriage that there was abuse going on and mental abuse and things happening. I didn't want people to know that. And so I kept on. And I kept on. And I kept on. Till one day, after church, I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm taking my kids. I'm out of here. Well, by this time, my kids were old enough to make a decision. And my son decided he wanted to stay. That's not uncommon. Again, an abuser, the child wants to stay close. They think they can please them. They can change it. They can make them better. So I didn't force the situation. The house was never mine because everything, and when you're in a controlling situation, everything is theirs. Nothing is ever yours. So I left with the clothes on my back and a few things of my daughter's. We went to my mom and dad's because where was I going to go? I had nowhere to go. And I filed for divorce. And that was the hardest thing I ever did in my life because no one had ever divorced. In our family. And here I am. I'm letting my dad down again. I didn't want to let my dad down or my family. I was the first divorce in our family. That was a lot on me. I felt so bad. I felt like the bad person. And then in the church, they thought we were just a 2-week thing and we could fix it and everything would be okay. And I tried to explain to them, it's not okay. You don't understand. This man has problem. He's sick. And he has a sickness and he needed help and he didn't want the help. So the divorce went through. And the day of the divorce, he took my son and he left back to Connecticut without telling me. My neighbor calls and she's like, Laura, did you know your house is empty? And I'm like, no. and he left the dogs in the backyard. I was like, oh my gosh, okay. And I frantic. I called my attorney and she was no help. I'm sorry, but there was no help. I called my son. I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, we're back in Connecticut. And I'm like, okay. So life went on, and I picked myself up, got me and my daughter an apartment. We got it all set up, and not very good with money. Of course, I got credit cards, and I started putting things on credit cards, and so we could have everything in the apartment. I just needed to have everything set for her and make her feel good and fill the void of what was going on. And I slowly started finding myself again, and that knowing I made the right decision getting out of an abusive marriage. My son wasn't abused anymore. He was probably mental abuse went on a lot, because he would call me crying and saying he wanted to come, but then he was scared to come. But when he turned 18, he made the decision to come back home. And everybody had told me, don't worry, he'll come back. He's going to come back. And I was so blessed to have my son come back. I had missed him so much. Being a mom is hard when you go through a divorce. Very hard. So I can relate to ladies that are out there struggling. Even if it's bad, it's still hard. You're out of something now, but you got to still figure everything out. And so he came back, and we'll talk about that more later on, because that's when life started changing for me for the better. My parents were amazing in helping me and loving my kids through this. My family was more shocked too. They knew, but they were, how in depth things were. But if I can just speak to the women there or out here, why I tell my story, not to feel sorry for me, but to tell you, don't keep living in it. Find a way out. Call somebody. Go somewhere. It's not meant to be that way. God created us to have an amazing relationship with one another. He wants the marriage to be united, not just, controlled. And that's what I lived in, a very controlled marriage. So that was my time in Connecticut, and then my transferring over to Georgia, back to Georgia. And I'll get to some things that are coming along that God just opened doors for me and showed grace and love and began to fill my soul and heart with purpose again, of knowing who I am and what He intended for me to have and to live and to be happy. Thank you for listening. I know that it sounds probably rambling on, but that was a hard time, and I still cry about it, because it's just, I think I hurt knowing that there's other people out there suffering that don't have to, and yet they still feel like they don't know a way out. So my prayer is today that you find that way out. God will lead you. He will help you, and I know He will. He helped me. Hey guys, I truly appreciate you taking the time to listen to this gal's story. Lolly loving life.